Picture this. It is a crisp, bright morning in June of 2026.
Okay.
You're a tenured astrophysics professor at Harvard University. You walk into your office, morning coffee in hand, just looking out the window at the morning light hitting the Boston skyline.
Sounds like a pretty ideal morning, honestly.
Right, it is. But then, sitting there on your desk is a physical letter. It's thick paper, and it bears the unmistakable, heavy, gold-embossed seal of the Executive Office of the President of the United States.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, you open it, and it is an official White House appointment. But this isn't for some quiet, bureaucratic post. This letter is handing over the reins to a brand new joint advisory committee spanning the White House, the Pentagon, and the U.S. intelligence community.
That is massive.
And the subject of the committee: Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, UAPs.
Which is just an absolute earthquake of a mandate for any academic. I mean, getting that kind of clearance and authority.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. The true shock here isn't the creation of the committee itself. The shock is the name on the envelope. Because the person opening this letter isn't a safe, predictable Washington insider.
Right.
It is Avi Loeb.
And that changes everything.
It really does, because this is the exact same man who for the last 6 years has been relentlessly mocked by mainstream science. We are talking about a guy who is labeled a UFO crackpot.
An alien hunter.
Yes, an alien hunter, a literal punchline at academic conferences. And now, suddenly the federal government is handing him the keys to the UAP kingdom. It's just a stunning reversal of fortune. So today we are doing a deep dive into our sources to map out exactly how an obscure, highly stigmatized topic transitions into mainstream, top-tier federal policy.
It is a wild ride, and to really understand the magnitude of this appointment, we kind of have to look at how Loeb became the most controversial man in astrophysics in the first place.
Let's do it.
Because the narrative out there, especially in the media, often paints him as this sort of outsider crank who just stumbled into the spotlight.
Right, like he just came out of nowhere with these wild theories.
Exactly. But his foundation is undeniably brilliant, and for decades it was incredibly orthodox. I mean, he was born in 1962 in Israel, grew up in an agricultural family.
I read about this. It's a great backstory.
It really is. There's this wonderful detail from his background where he talks about sitting out in the farm fields at night as a kid, reading Einstein's popular science books.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's literally connecting the theoretical physics on the page to the actual night sky above him. It's very poetic.
It is, and that intellectual curiosity obviously took him far. I mean, from those farm fields to a PhD in astrophysics from Princeton.
Right, and from there, he becomes one of the youngest people ever to receive tenure at Harvard University.
Wait, how old was he?
He was just 30 years old.
30. That is, I mean, you do not get tenure at Harvard at 30 unless your work is absolutely bulletproof.
You really don't. And his early work was exactly that. We're talking about seminal research on black holes, the formation of the first generation of stars in the universe.
The heavy stuff.
Very heavy. The mechanics of gamma ray bursts. He was doing the hard, deeply complex math of the cosmos. He was a pillar of the establishment.
A pillar that stood completely solid until the fall of 2017.
Yes, 2017.
That is the catalyst for everything that follows in this deep dive, because the Pan-STARRS Observatory in Hawaii spots something wild.
And we should clarify, Pan-STARRS is designed to continuously scan the sky for moving objects, right?
Exactly. They are primarily looking for near-Earth asteroids that might pose a threat to us. But they discover an object hurtling through our solar system, and based on its trajectory and its immense speed, the orbital mechanics dictate it could not have been bound by our sun's gravity.
Meaning it didn't come from our neighborhood.
Right. It came from interstellar space. It was the first interstellar objects humanity had ever recorded passing through our solar system.
Which is a massive historic milestone on its own.
Huge. And they name it Umuama, which is Hawaiian for scout or messenger from afar.
Fitting. So what happens next? Mainstream science does what mainstream science always does, right?
Yeah, they immediately try to categorize it using known models. They assume, well, it must be a comet, or maybe an oddly shaped asteroid.
Because that's what we know. That's what we've seen before.
Exactly. But Oumuamua wasn't acting like a normal comet or asteroid. And this is where Loeb commits his great academic heresy. He actually points out the anomalies.
And there's several big ones.
Yeah. First, the shape. Based on the way the sunlight reflected off it as it tumbled through space, what astronomers call a light curve, it was shaped like a cigar. Or a pancake.
Right, an extreme length-to-width ratio.
Completely unlike any asteroid we've ever seen. But more importantly, it had no coma.
Now, we should probably break down why the lack of a coma is so crucial here for the listener.
Please do.
So, a comet is essentially a dirty snowball. When it gets close to the sun, the ice on its surface sublimates.
Sublimates meaning it goes from solid to gas.
Exactly. It turns directly from a solid into a gas, skipping the liquid phase entirely. And that process creates a massive cloud of dust and gas around the comet, which we call the coma. And it also creates a tail that always points away from the sun due to the solar wind. Now, we have incredibly sensitive telescopes that can detect even the faintest traces of carbon-based molecules in a coma.
So they looked for it.
They looked, and there was nothing. It was completely dry.
Okay, so it's not a comet. But yet, as it was leaving the solar system, it accelerated.
This is the kicker.
It experienced a non-gravitational acceleration, meaning an extra unexplained push that cannot be accounted for by the sun's gravity alone.
Which usually that push comes from the comet off-gassing, right?
Right, the sublimating gas acts like a tiny thruster, pushing the comet along. But as you just said, there was no gas. There was no tail, no thruster.
So how is it accelerating?
Exactly. So loeb publishes a paper with a staggering conclusion. He hypothesizes that, given these anomalies, we have to consider the possibility that it is artificial.
Wow.
Specifically, he says it could be an extraterrestrial light sail.
And the mechanics of a light sail are fascinating because they are grounded in real physics. It's not magic.
No, not at all.
Photons, particles of light, they do not have mass, but they do have momentum. If you have a surface that is incredibly thin, lightweight, and perfectly reflective, the sunlight hitting it will actually impart a tiny physical push.
We're actually building primitive versions of these ourselves on Earth right now, aren't we?
We are. So Loeb argued that Oumuamua's extreme shape, its lack of a coma, and its unexplained acceleration perfectly fit the mathematical model of a derelict piece of extraterrestrial technology being pushed by the sun's radiation pressure.
And the academic reaction was, well, it was brutal.
Oh, absolutely brutal. The establishment completely closed ranks.
You had major publications running profiles labeling him an alien hunter. And in Nature, which is one of the most prestigious scientific journals on Earth, peer reviewers openly scoffed at his work.
Do you have the quote? Because it's pretty harsh.
I do. One of them actually wrote that his logic, quote, jumped like he forgot the gravity formula.
Oh, man, that is meant to completely delegitimize a physicist.
Right. It makes me think of a mechanical analogy. Imagine you have a highly respected structural engineer, right?
Yeah.
Someone who has built suspension bridges all over the world.
Okay.
Suddenly, they publish a paper claiming a local bridge collapsed not because of metal fatigue, but because a localized anti-gravity field briefly materialized.
Right, right.
The rest of the engineering world wouldn't just disagree with him. They would try to revoke his license because the claim undermines the foundational rules of the entire profession.
That captures the sentiment perfectly. Traditionally, when an academic faces that level of intense, unified blowback from institutions like Nature, they retreat.
They hide.
Yeah, they pull back, they publish a few very safe, orthodox papers to rebuild their reputation, and they quietly serve on some standard committees until everyone forgets.
But Avi Loeb did the exact opposite.
He really did. He executed a massive pivot leaning entirely into the controversy. He writes a book called Extraterrestrial that becomes a massive bestseller.
Huge bestseller.
He follows it up with another book, Interstellar. He bypasses the traditional academic funding models entirely, goes out, and raises private money to found the Galileo Project at Harvard.
Which is wild. And what exactly is the Galileo Project doing?
This is a research initiative specifically dedicated to hunting for alien technosignatures.
Technosignatures, meaning?
Meaning measurable physical markers of advanced technology, like atmospheric industrial pollution on a distant exoplanet or, anomalous objects in our own atmosphere.
So he fundamentally understood that the old rules of academic gatekeeping were eroding.
Exactly. In the modern media era, you can bypass the traditional consensus if you can capture the public imagination.
And he did. He started appearing at congressional hearings, aggressively demanding that the federal government release its classified UAP data. He leveraged the mockery of his peers to build incredible momentum with the public.
Because every time a mainstream scientist rolled their eyes, Loeb reached another million people on television.
But, and this is a big but, being a loud best-selling author and capturing the public imagination doesn't automatically grant you a White House appointment.
No, it definitely doesn't.
The executive branch doesn't just hand out gold-embossed letters because you went viral or wrote a popular book. There has to be a deeper mechanism at play that forced the hand of the federal government to bring him inside the tent.
And that mechanism is the shifting tide of public belief, which ultimately translates to political pressure. The sources provide vital context here regarding a seismic shift in public sentiment in the United States.
What are the numbers looking like?
Well, we have to look at the Gallup polling data. Back in 2019, about 33% of Americans believed that the government was hiding information about aliens or UAPs.
Okay, a third of the country. Still a lot.
Right, but by 2025, that number had surged to nearly 50%.
Half the country.
Half the country. Just think about the profound implications of that metric for any governing body. When 50% of your citizens fundamentally believe you are lying to them about the nature of reality, about whether humanity is alone in the universe, you are facing a severe crisis of institutional trust.
It's huge.
It is no longer a quirky subculture. It is a mainstream crisis of faith in government transparency.
I have to push back hard on this, though, because if I'm looking at this from the outside, the White House giving Loeb this appointment feels incredibly cynical.
How so?
It feels like pure pandering. They see a terrifying polling number, half the electorate thinks they are liars, and they grab the loudest squeaky wheel in academia, give him a fancy title, and put him on a committee just to placate the masses.
I see what you're saying.
I mean, is it ethical to validate a fringe theory and elevate a highly controversial figure just to calm down the electorate? Aren't they degrading the scientific institutions they're supposed to protect by playing politics with astrophysics?
Well, that is the central philosophical tension of this entire saga. It is a very real danger to validate fringe science for political points, but we have to analyze the pragmatism of governance.
Okay, walk me through their logic.
The sources note that White House officials explicitly stated this committee was formed to, quote, respond to public attention.
Which is political shorthand for acknowledging the crisis of trust.
Exactly. The logic of the administration is this. If half the country believes you are hiding something, you cannot ignore it. And you cannot just issue a standard press release from a nameless bureaucrat denying it.
Because nobody believes the nameless bureaucrat anymore.
Precisely the point. You must build a credible, highly visible scientific governance structure to address the phenomena.
Right.
Because if the government fails to create a formal public-facing mechanism to study UAPs, the public will turn entirely away from official channels and fall into completely unregulated conspiracy theories.
So it's damage control.
It is. The administration views elevating Loeb not as degrading science, but as building a pressure valve. You take the ultimate outsider, the man the public trusts because the establishment hates him, and you make him the face of the investigation.
Wow. It is a remarkable piece of political calculus when you put it like that.
Yeah.
You take your loudest critic, the one throwing rocks at the Pentagon from the outside, and you invite him inside.
Keep your friends close and your alien hunters closer.
Exactly. And the timing here is not coincidental at all. It is 2026 in our scenario.
Yeah.
This is a midterm election year in the U.S. And over the last few years leading up to this, UAPs have bizarrely become one of the only genuinely bipartisan issues in Washington.
It's true. The groundwork was meticulously laid by Congress before the White House ever made this move. Let's look back at 2024.
Okay.
The Senate Intelligence Committee pushed a massive piece of legislation known as the UAP Disclosure Act Amendment. And the goal of that legislation was staggering. It aimed to force the creation of a unified government-wide UAP data collection and analysis system by 2025.
And it has some pretty intense language in it, right?
Oh, yeah. It even included language regarding eminent domain, theoretically allowing the government to seize any recovered non-human technology held by private defense contractors.
See, the fact that language about seizing non-human technology made it into a serious Senate amendment shows how far this conversation had moved.
Absolutely.
Even though that specific act was watered down and didn't fully pass all its legislative hurdles in its original, most aggressive form, the writing was on the wall.
Congress was coming for this issue.
Yeah, they were coming, and they were bringing bipartisan hammers. So by appointing Avi Loeb in 2026 to lead a joint advisory committee, the White House is strategically front-running Congress.
They are taking control of the narrative.
Yes. The executive branch is demonstrating to the electorate ahead of the midterms that they are taking the issue seriously without needing to be forced by heavy-handed Senate legislation.
Because if they had appointed a quiet standard scientist, it wouldn't have made the evening news. Appointing the alien professor sends a loud, unmistakable signal to that 50% of the public that the government is fully engaging with the mystery.
So they get their massive PR win. They appease the public, they get ahead of Congress, and they neutralize their loudest critic by giving him a desk.
What?
But this brings us to the structural collision. Because bringing a critic inside for a PR win is one thing. Having that critic actually sit in classified Pentagon briefing rooms and demand data is something else entirely.
We have to talk about the bureaucratic clash this creates.
Yes, because the Pentagon did not leave this space empty waiting for Loeb to arrive. They already have their own established infrastructure.
Right. It's called AARO, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office.
AARO.
Yes. It was established by the Department of Defense in 2022 specifically to serve as the central hub for collecting and analyzing UAP sighting reports, primarily from military personnel and sensors.
And the man running ARO is John Kozlowski. Based on the sources, Kozlowski is the absolute antithesis of Avi Loeb.
He really is. He is a veteran intelligence officer.
Yeah.
His entire career is built within a culture where keeping secrets is not just a preference. It is the fundamental requirement of the job.
Right. He is quiet, professional, by the book, and operates entirely behind closed doors.
So you have John Kozlowski, the ultimate quiet intelligence insider, and Avi Loeb, the ultimate loud academic outsider, suddenly forced to collaborate.
I'd pay to be a fly on the wall in those meetings.
Seriously. Now, on paper, the bureaucracy pitched this as a clean division of labor. According to the organizational charts, ARO is supposed to handle the what it is part of the equation.
Meaning they collect the raw data, the classified pilot reports, the advanced sensor track.
Exactly. And Loeb's new White House Advisory Committee is supposed to handle how to look at it. They are there to advise on the scientific methodology to build the framework for analyzing that data.
I mean, that sounds functional in a PowerPoint presentation, but in reality, it is a recipe for instant gridlock. Loeb has spent years publicly accusing the intelligence community of hiding data. He literally goes on national television right after his appointment and declares, quote, "The age of secrecy is over."
You are taking a radical advocate for absolute transparency and putting him in charge of advising an intelligence agency's internal data.
It's oil and water. And the gridlock is rooted in an incredibly complex issue that our sources break down. We can call it the data pipeline problem.
This is the core contradiction of the entire White House initiative.
Because Loeb's mandate and his personal philosophy is to conduct true, rigorous science. And true science requires open data.
It requires transparent methodologies, reproducible results, and peer review. A scientist must be able to publish their data set so that other scientists around the world can check their work, look for errors, and validate the conclusions.
Right. You cannot publish a paper claiming you have discovered an extraterrestrial craft, but then tell the scientific community that the math and the sensor readings are classified and they just have to trust you.
That isn't science. That's dogma.
Exactly. But AR's data, the raw materials required for Loeb's research, is fundamentally and inherently classified.
And we need to explain why this data is classified, because it's a crucial point. It's not necessarily because it shows a flying saucer.
Okay.
It is classified because of how it was collected. When a Navy F-18 encounters a UAP, the data comes from the jet's Advanced Phased Array Radar and its forward-looking infrared, or FLIR, targeting pods.
Let's use a mechanical analogy to explain this because I think it helps visualize the problem.
Let's hear it.
Imagine you manage a bank and you want to prove to the public that you have the most advanced, impenetrable security system in the world.
Okay.
You caught a bizarre anomaly on tape, maybe a ghost, maybe a super thief. The public demands to see the tape, but you can't release the footage because the footage itself reveals the exact resolution of your cameras.
Yeah.
It reveals the precise blind spots in your coverage and the specific wavelengths of light your sensors can detect. You cannot show the intruder without simultaneously showing the bank robbers exactly how to defeat your system next time.
That is an excellent way to frame it. National security is built on keeping the capabilities and the limitations of your sensors a secret.
Because if the Pentagon releases unredacted radar data of a UAP moving at Mach 10,
They are also telling adversaries like China and Russia the exact fidelity, tracking speed, and frequency hopping capabilities of America's most advanced aerospace sensors.
and knowing the fidelity of the radar tells an adversary exactly how to build electronic warfare systems to jam it.
Exactly. So the intelligence agencies, represented by Kozlowski and AARO, are in an impossible position.
They're never going to hand over their crown jewel sensor data to an academic known for being a loudmouth who explicitly wants to publish public papers about anomalies.
At least not without a literal act of Congress forcing them to declassify the capabilities of their defense platforms.
You simply cannot have open science when the raw materials are classified state secrets. The pipeline is fundamentally broken from day one.
Which leads us to a massive epistemological crisis.
Let's unpack that.
Let's engage in a hypothetical. Let's say a miracle occurs.
Okay, a miracle.
The Pentagon decides the mystery is too important, and they completely open the vault. Kozlowski hands over a hard drive to Loeb with every piece of unredacted radar data, satellite telemetry, and infrared video they possess.
Just hands it over.
Just hands it over. Loeb still faces a monumental hurdle from his own peers in the scientific community, which is, how do you actually study the unknown?
Well, mainstream astronomers still view his claims about Oumuamua as severe overextrapolation. They look at his track record and they fear his judgment is compromised by confirmation bias.
Because when a researcher wants to find something as profound as extraterrestrial life that badly, they tend to see it everywhere. Every sensor glitch looks like a warp drive.
Right. And for mainstream science, having someone with that perceived level of confirmation bias leading a national scientific committee is a massive risk to the credibility of the entire field of astrophysics.
Several anonymous astronomers quoted in the source material offer a pretty devastating critique of this.
What did I say?
They suggest Loeb was hired as a mascot, an attention-first hire. They believe he is there to absorb the media spotlight, not to establish rigorous UAP methodology.
Ouch. But that raises a foundational question about the philosophy of science itself.
Yeah.
If the White House actually wants real science, what does that even look like in this context? If I am Avi Loeb sitting at that desk, what is the academic framework for a UFO?
It is a profound challenge. Is it astrobiology? No, because we don't have biological samples to swab or sequence.
Right.
Is it atmospheric physics? Is it aerospace engineering?
How do you create a control group?
Yeah.
The scientific method relies on falsifiable hypotheses.
Right.
A falsifiable hypothesis means you have to be able to design an experiment that could theoretically prove your idea wrong. If your hypothesis is, these objects use a physics we don't understand, how do you test that? How do you separate a software glitch in an F-18's radar system from a genuine physical craft that is manipulating gravity?
This is Loeb's ultimate test, and it is far more difficult than fighting with the Pentagon. He doesn't just have to study UAPs, he has to invent the discipline from scratch.
There is no textbook for this.
None. He has to establish the scientific methodology, how to form a hypothesis, how to test it without a laboratory control, and how to conduct peer review on a transient anomaly that you cannot reproduce on demand.
Because if this new committee spends a year meeting in Washington and only produces a stack of memos stating that the phenomena require more study,
his critics will be entirely vindicated. It will prove the entire endeavor was just a political stunt to appease a Gallup poll.
the burden of proof is entirely on him to build a rigorous framework.
Yeah.
Yet, despite the logistical nightmares, the bureaucratic infighting, and the intense academic skepticism, Loeb remains entirely unfazed.
He really does.
So sources quote a specific interview he gave that encapsulates his defense. He said, and I'm paraphrasing the translation here, "Letting children tell me if there's other intelligent life in the universe, isn't that the most worthy question for humanity?"
Isn't that the most worthy question for humanity? It is a brilliant pivot away from the minutia of classified radar and academic squabbles.
It really is.
He is making a moral argument for open science. He is stripping away all the bureaucracy, the censor secrets, the academic backbiting, and pointing directly at fundamental human curiosity.
It is incredibly difficult to argue against that philosophy. I mean, whether a scientist likes his aggressive media style or not. The direction he is pushing, that data concerning our place in the universe should not be lost in a military vault, that we should openly study if we have neighbors, is philosophically very powerful.
It acts as the ultimate trump card against his critics. You can attack his methodology, but you look like a cynic attacking his underlying goal.
Right. Now, while the Americans are tangled up in this complex web of domestic political theater, fighting over who gets to see the radar data and who gets to publish the paper, the sources point out that they aren't the only ones looking at the sky.
No, they are not.
If we pull back the lens, the implications of this UAP discussion extend far beyond Washington. Another global superpower is quietly watching, preparing, and investing.
We have to examine China.
Yes. The sources mention a very specific event in 2024. The Chinese Academy of Sciences held a small, closed-door seminar on UAPs.
Which is very telling.
They're taking this phenomenon seriously, but they're doing it with characteristic state discipline, entirely without the public fanfare, the congressional hearings, or the White House press releases we see in the U.S.
And China brings a massive, undeniable technological advantage to this specific hunt. We are talking about FAST.
The 500-meter aperture spherical radio telescope, also known as sky eye.
This is an absolute marvel of engineering. To understand why FAST is such an advantage, we have to look at how it's built.
Okay, lay it out.
Most traditional radio telescopes are steerable dishes. They move around. But a 500-meter dish would collapse under its own weight. It's just too big.
So how did they build it?
China built FAST directly into a massive natural karst depression, essentially a giant sinkhole in Guizhou province. It consists of over 4,000 triangular panels that actively shift and deform to focus radio waves from space into a receiver suspended above the dish.
That is mind-blowing.
It's incredible. And in radio astronomy, size is everything. The larger the aperture, the more sensitive the telescope is to incredibly faint distant signals. FAST is currently the largest and most sensitive filled aperture radio telescope in the world.
And its chief scientist, Li Dai, has not been shy about its capabilities or its mission, right?
Not at all. He has publicly stated that FAST is capable of detecting artificial narrowband signals.
Let's explain why narrowband signals are the holy grail here.
Please do.
So the universe is incredibly loud. Stars, quasars, supernovas, they all blast out massive amounts of radio waves. But natural phenomena produce wideband noise, like static on a radio dial. Nature is messy.
Right.
A narrowband signal is a highly compressed, specific frequency that stands out from the static. It is the equivalent of shining a highly focused laser pointer in a brightly lit room. Nature does not produce narrowband signals. They are a hallmark of deliberate artificial engineering.
And searching for extraterrestrial intelligence, the field known as SETI, is what Liddy explicitly calls a tacit mission for this massive observatory. It is baked into their operational DNA.
Wow.
The sources also mention that Tsinghua University has a dedicated SETI group working on this data. Now, currently, their budget is smaller than what we see distributed across U.S. institutions, but the intent is clear, and the hardware is unequivocally world-class.
It feels like the dawn of a bizarre new Cold War space race. But instead of racing to build the biggest rocket to plant a piece of fabric on the moon, we are now racing to be the first nation to definitively answer the Fermi paradox. We're racing to answer, are we alone in the universe?
It is a compelling geopolitical framing. And if we break down this race, we see two very different strategic advantages. China has the superior singular piece of hardware for deep space radio detection with FAST. They have the engineering marvel.
Right.
But if UAP researched this whole phenomenon of anomalous objects in our atmosphere and signals from deep space transitions into a legitimate, well-funded new track in global science, the U.S. currently holds a massive institutional edge.
And that edge circles all the way back to the appointment of Avi Loeb.
Exactly.
By elevating this research to a White House-level committee, the U.S. is formalizing it. They are stamping it with the institutional legitimacy of the executive branch. They are signaling to the academic world, this is a real discipline now, and has the backing of the U.S. government.
The geopolitical byproduct of that institutionalization is what we can call the talent dividend.
The talent dividend, I love that term. Break that down.
For the last several decades, the top astrophysics, aerospace, and engineering PhD graduates globally have overwhelmingly flocked to U.S. institutions. The funding, the prestige, the research networks, they are all concentrated in the American university system.
Sure.
If the U.S. government suddenly treats UAP research as a serious, highly funded discipline, they are perfectly positioned to capture the first wave of this top-tier talent.
This is a profound insight from the sources. The actual discovery of aliens might be secondary to the geopolitical benefits of the search itself.
Exactly.
The U.S. can say to the brightest young mathematical and engineering minds in the world, don't go build trading algorithms for Wall Street, and don't go back to your home countries. Come to America and study anomalous physics with White House backing.
It's a massive draw.
You use the mystery of UAPs as a magnet to capture the world's best STEM talent, which inevitably bleeds over into advancements in terrestrial aerospace, sensor tech, and material science.
Spot on. China has the FAST telescope, but they lack this top-down, formalized policy framework that Loeb is now helping to build in the U.S. They don't have the institutional mechanism to capture that global talent dividend specifically for anomalous research.
So it's hardware versus institutional framework.
Yes. Amidst the intense global races for artificial intelligence dominance, microchip manufacturing, and orbital mechanics, we have this totally unexpected new lane of geopolitical competition.
And the stakes of this particular race are arguably the highest of all. Because whoever applies the most rigorous scientific method to the extraterrestrial contact question, whoever actually cracks the code or finds the definitive proof, They claim the ultimate ideological and philosophical high ground for human civilization.
It changes everything.
It changes religion, philosophy, and our fundamental understanding of our place in the cosmos. It's not just a technological victory, it is a civilizational victory.
It is the ultimate paradigm shift. And that is why this appointment of Avi Loeb, as chaotic, controversial, and messy as it is, matters so immensely. It is the catalyst that forces the government to take the race seriously.
Let's bring this all together.
Okay.
We started with a brilliant, orthodox Harvard professor who was laughed out of the room by his peers for suggesting a weird interstellar rock might be a derelict alien light sail.
Right.
We watched him leverage that academic mockery into immense public fame, effectively forcing a federal government terrified of plunging institutional trust to bring him inside the tent.
The pressure valve.
Exactly. We've explored the absolute structural nightmare of trying to mix open scientific methodology with classified military censor secrets. And we've zoomed out to see the shadow of China and a new global race for the ultimate truth, driven as much by the desire for a talent dividend as it is by the search for life.
It truly is a masterclass in how fringe ideas move into the mainstream, propelled by an incredible cocktail of public pressure, the limits of intelligence secrecy, and grand geopolitical maneuvering.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to ponder.
A provocative one, I hope.
I think so. We've spent all this time talking about the search for anomalies, the mechanics of radar, the politics of disclosure. But what if the true legacy of this new White House UAP committee isn't actually about finding aliens at all?
Wait, where are you going with this?
What if the real story is how the mere search for extraterrestrial life is acting as the ultimate forcing function? What if this search is the only thing powerful enough to force our governments to fundamentally redesign the rigid boundaries between classified national security and transparent global science?
Oh, wow. I see what you mean.
For 70 years, the intelligence apparatus has been an impenetrable black box. But now, because of the profound public interest in the UAP phenomenon, they are being forced, kicking and screaming, to figure out how to share their data.
Because the public demands it.
Yes. Perhaps this whole UFO saga isn't just about what is flying in our skies. Perhaps the UAP phenomenon is just the stress test humanity desperately needs to learn how to finally share its deepest secrets with itself, to build a transparent global scientific community before we are ever truly ready to face whatever might be waiting for us out there in the dark.
That is a deeply fascinating possibility to consider. It really shifts the entire perspective.
It does. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking up, keep questioning the structures of information around you, and the next time you see a heavy gold embossed letter sitting on your desk, you might want to think twice before opening it.